Well, hey there, everyone. So, work is still continuing here on the Todd engine foundation project. Um, let's see. I don't know where we're at in the last video. I think we had those beams in. This one here. Now we have this one here in, and I've been drilling holes here in this foundation wall. Because when we put this flywheel pit in years ago, we had two pours because when I was very young and naive, I didn't calculate the amount of concrete correctly that we needed, and so we had to do it in two pours. So which gives me a little bit of a seam there. Now I know I stuck some rebar down in the concrete, the first pour to stick up to catch the second one. But just as a way of assuring that we don't have any future problems with this wall, drilling down in, and we're going to put rebar and epoxy down in there in those holes. So I'll show you here. Yeah. So that's the size of drill bit. It's the longest drill bit that I could find, 1 inch diameter. And I think we're going down a good 32 inches or so down into the concrete, which is far enough to get below that seam. So I've got that taking place. And I wanted to show you that last week we took the main bearings out of the Todd engine, and it's sitting up on those supports, so we were able to slide the main bearings out, and they're sitting right here. So this is what the main bearings of the engine look like. This is tin-based Babbitt on a cast iron liner. And as you can see here, we had a little bit of wiping, what they call wiping. This engine sat outside for a good number of years after we put it together here, and there were these two holes in the top of the bearing cap that you could look down in at the top of the shaft rotating, and there was also a place where oil would drip down. Well, the one at this location at the top of the shaft had quite a bit of corrosion that built up over the years, and then so when we rotated the shaft, all that corrosion came down and right on through there, and it kind of mushed over the Babbitt into the oil grooves and messed up the surface a little bit. So we're going to get in here and kind of clean this up, polish it up, of course polish up the journal itself when this all goes back in. We are going to reuse these for now. I don't really have the resources to re-Babbitt these. This one here is a little concerning. There's a lot of cracks in here, and some of these little pieces are loose. You can kind of move them around a little bit, and then there's oil dripping out. So it's not the best situation. But I'm hoping that we can lubricate these journals enough that it won't cause us too much of an issue. The one thing we're going to do is drill down through the middle of this cast iron liner, put maybe a 3/8 inch hole into the middle, and then drill down here to meet up with it. And then when we go to run the engine, in addition to the oil being fed in from the top, oil will also get fed in from the bottom and then come up into this groove, basically pre-lubing the journal, so we're not, the thing isn't rotating without any oil. Because normally with this type of a journal, the oil would start pouring in from the top, but as this journal is sitting in this bearing for long periods of time, it just pushes all that oil that's in there out of the way, and then you have steel on Babbitt contact. and then it's a high likelihood of what they call wiping a journal, which is it just starts just wiping the Babbitt along with it because there's so much friction there. Well, if you can get this oil in here and fill up all these cracks and crevices and all the little gaps even before it starts turning, well, that it still may be metal on Babbitt contact, but it's going to go a little bit and it's going to catch the oil and then go, instead of making basically a half a revolution even before it starts sucking the oil in. So that's the principle behind having a pressurized pre-lube to the underside of the journals. Hopefully that'll buy us some time to operate this. The other journal surface, this one here is actually in much better condition. You don't see nearly as much of the cracking in this one as in the other one. So I'm not as concerned about that one. That one will also get the pressurized pre-lube. One thing that we're going to be doing differently with this engine is rotating it the opposite direction. So in a stationary steam engine, you can run what they call running over, which that means the wheel goes that way, that's running over, or it can run under, which means the wheel is spinning this way, coming down toward you and running under that way. Well, this engine ran over, so the wheel rotated, if we're looking at it this way, it would be counterclockwise. We're going to make this thing run the opposite direction. It's going to run clockwise. And doing that means that instead of that journal going this way and pull, and when it rotates this way, of course this journal wants to move forward and put most of its weight over on this side because it's trying to climb out of the bearing. Going this way, it's trying to climb this way. But you see the cracking and all that's on this side. There isn't nearly as much on this side. So if we can keep that force on this side of this bearing, I think we'll be in better shape. Same goes with that one there. Now, you may ask, well, why would you want to run under instead of over? All right, well, here's the reasoning behind that. So, with the flywheel going this way, let's say the three rolls on the mill stand would be going in this direction here. Okay, but then you have, say, this shaft and this shaft coming together. So if this is running this way, as that gear tooth comes around, it's picking up on this shaft here to get it to go this way. And so this rotational force in that gear tooth is picking up on this shaft, meaning that this shaft here is going to want to jump up in its bearing. And if there's any clearance, which there is clearance, it's going to jump up and down as it rotates. If we're going the other way, if this is going this way, that gear tooth is coming around, it's pushing on the gear tooth on this side, and it's pushing that force downward into the bearing, and it's going to tend to keep that journal or that shaft pushing down and away from the clearance on the bearing cap. So it doesn't really affect anything for the operation of the rolling mill. The engine will look a little different because it's going the way opposite that when you normally see a stationary steam engine, you normally see that wheel, that big wheel spinning in that direction, going this way. Well, it'll be going this way, which is kind of more like a steam locomotive looks. A stationary engine runs the opposite way that you normally see the rods on a steam locomotive. Now, however, the sister engine to this, the continuous mill engine, which sat next to it at Briar Hill up until 1935, it ran under. So you had one engine running under and this one next to it running over. So getting it to run under, not going to be a big deal, because thankfully William Todd Company put on the drawings what you have to do in order to switch the rotation of the engine, and it's basically where you put the governor wheel on the engine dictates which direction the engine will run. So there's one of the drawings has it denoted to get it to run under. This is what you got to do. That's what we'll do when the time comes. So so for those of you who I haven't put to sleep yet, that's basically the thought process behind the direction we're going to have this running, and also to kind of salvage the journals so that we don't have to go through the process of pouring new ones. Now, if we had to pour new journals, replace this Babbitt, how would we do it? Well, normally what they would do is that they would make what they call a mandrel. So this shaft is 23 inch in diameter. They'd make a 23 inch diameter round piece, and it would stand up, and then you take this liner and you sit up next to it. Of course, you melt all the old Babbitt out, and you set up next to it and attach it to this mandrel so that you can pour the molten Babbitt into there, and then you basically get your it would make itself nice and cylindrical, and it's basically what McDonald did when they did all these. However, those journals are worn to the point where they kind of taper out here, and then they taper and they get a little bit smaller in diameter, and they're basically cylindrical, and then they taper back out again. You can just about see that where it tapers outward. Well, that's because that's 65 years worth of wear on that shaft. That's no longer 23 inch in the middle. It's like 22 3/4 or so. Well, if we were to make this cylindrical on a mandrel, you'd put it in, and the bearing would touch at this end and touch at that end. It wouldn't touch in the middle, and then anywhere where there's little undulations in the diameter, it wouldn't touch. It would basically run hot. It would be worse than just using this. The other thing that we could do is take this liner, melt the Babbitt out, put it back in the position there, get the shaft exactly where it needs to be, and then build a dam around this, and then pour the Babbitt in the position with we're using the shaft itself as its own mandrel, and do it in the bearing. Now that's possible on the 48 mil engine. That's how they did it on that one, because you can definitely tell those were poured in place. We could do it on this one too, but that's a lot of work. And you've got to make sure that you build your dams and all that, especially on either end here, so that none of this Babbitt runs out. Because then if you got a little bit of a pinhole and it starts running out, well then you got a huge mess on your hand. So we could do that at some point in the future. Not looking forward to doing that, but it's a possibility. Well, another thing is that if you do this, of course, you got to heat the shaft up, and then you got to heat the liner up. Not too hot, a few hundred degrees. I forget what the temperature that Babbitt melts at, like 800 or 900 degrees, maybe a little hotter with this stuff. You got to warm all that stuff up, and then you make sure it doesn't stick. And there's a whole process involved, and it would take quite a while. So, and we'll put it together this way and then run it and see what happens. If these bearings seem to be happy, then we're not going to bother it for a while. But if they start showing signs of wiping the journal and coming apart or anything, then we're going to have to look into that. We have the capabilities of doing it. It's a lot of work. I won't lie, it's a lot of work to get it all set up to do it right. Not that I wouldn't want to try it at some point in my life, because I've never actually done it before, and that's like a challenge that's right in my wheelhouse, but I've got so much other stuff to do here right now. So that's where I'm at on on the Todd engine so far. We've set a tentative goal of the end of May being ready for the first concrete, which is basically from the flywheel pit over, getting under the low pressure cylinder done first part of May. And after we get that poured, then we're going to go and recheck alignment yet again before we even start setting up for this side. But then I'd still like to get this side done before the end of the year. So before we go into winter, we'll have, you know, the entire engine up on its permanent foundation. Then I can start working on the machinery end of things. And then, you know, that means taking all this stuff out of here, basically taking this wall out, putting the infill wall in. There's supposed to be a concrete wall that runs between the columns here that keeps basically it's like a foundation wall, and it keeps the water from outside from trickling in. We didn't do that when we put the building in. So this wall has to be taken out, this all dug out, and this concrete taken out, and then the foundation for the engine and the electric motor drive all put in at the same time. So, oh boy. Yeah, lots to do still, but so we're going to take it in little chunks. We're going to get the low pressure side done and then move on from there. So that's what we're doing here on the Todd rolling mill project end of things. We have our dates open for the steam locomotive experiences with the 58. So if you go to youngstownsteel.org, click on operating days, we have all the days available that you can sign up for the steam loco experiences, and come on out and run the 58, see what we're doing here with the rolling mill. Everybody is always welcome to come out and visit us. We're generally always here on Saturdays, most Sundays as well. So all right, everyone, take care.